We have been talking about this, people working from home. You may have heard the story earlier today. I think they said Montreal now has 80% of the people who work downtown now coming into work at least one day a week. And that sounds good, but obviously that's not enough. Then there's the issue, and I think this is only in Ontario. I was talking about this the other day with someone. They're now instituting a policy in Ontario where your employer will no longer be able to spy on you, right? To follow you if you work from home, for example, right? And I read this and I thought, wait a sec, I didn't know this was this serious a problem. Then I read they actually have programs now that can read your eye movement. So if I'm looking at a Zoom call, for example, and if you're working, whatever, and your boss is looking, they can see if you're looking away or doing something else. They can monitor your keystrokes to see if it's work-related. It's kind of crazy.
Dave's company has they call it the green ball, and I don't know what that means, but it's like you have to make sure your mouse is moving and your computer is active.
Isn't that insane?
And it logs the time.
So that's where we sort of gotten. And then I came across, we see this story, and it's a bit of a kind of a change from that. So we know, of course, a lot of Canadians, I think the last number was 26%, age 25 to 54, were working exclusively from home. That's the highest number it's ever been, right? Which, of course, provides a lot more freedom than being at the office. Apparently, though, the interesting part of this story provides enough freedom to take another job at home while you're doing your first job. So we thought we'd try to find out more. Jonathan Nightingale is co-founder of Raw Signal Group, which provides management and leadership training. He's on the line right now. Jonathan, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Hey, my pleasure. Lovely to talk to you both.
So let's get into this. I don't think that anyone might have thought this would be a problem at the beginning. I think people were so excited to finally have the opportunity to work from home that they would have said, great, I love the extra time I'm having. Who thought it would turn out to be extra time they could find more work?
Well, it's funny, right? Like, what would cause a person to sign up for a whole other job? And when you see some of the writing about this stuff, it talks about it like this is a COVID phenomenon, like this is brand new, there's something weird. But if you take a step back, people have been working multiple jobs for a long time, right? If you're waiting tables, a lot of the people that are working in your industry are working multiple jobs. If you've got like a day job that's not paying you enough and you're driving an Uber in the evening, you're working two jobs at once. It's just somehow it feels different when we're talking about, knowledge work, when we're talking about somebody sitting in front of a laptop at home or in a coffee shop or whatever, shutting down from one job for the day and then signing on to another one. And so, like, you've seen a little flurry of conversation about this. I think it's still not a huge thing, but certainly it's raised people's eyebrows.
So what are some of the issues? Obviously the ethical issue, as you pointed out, you've got a full-time job that you're supposed to be doing full-time, and clearly you're moonlighting and cutting into that time to be able to do or maybe you're not. I mean, you tell me the scenario here, but what are some of the issues that could arise, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think the obvious one, Aaron pointed it at the top, is that signing up for more work. When the pandemic started and everybody started working from home, one of the first stats that came out is that people were working an average of 2 extra hours per day. Mm-hmm. And if you were someone who was doing it, that's true, right? You missed your commute time, but it just meant more time in front of the laptop. And so doing that at two jobs, even if you're really strict about 8 hours a day, and that's a recipe for burnout. It's also worth saying that depending on what that job is, you might be in violation of your contract. And maybe a lot of people don't care so much, but a lot of employment contracts say we get exclusive right to your working time. You're not working for anybody else. And even the ones that don't often say things like, you can't work for a competitor. We get to approve any other work you're doing, that kind of thing, right? Some of them are really aggressive and say we own every great idea you have. And if two contracts are both saying that, it puts you in a real tough spot if one or both of those management teams want to talk to you about what you're doing in your free time.
So is this the kind of thing, I mentioned the situation in Ontario and how bizarre I thought that was, but apparently it's going to actually happen, and I'm sure that will affect other employers in other provinces too, maybe rethinking their policies. What's the concern here for someone working from home? I don't know, who either gets caught or maybe the suggestion is that, this is not really the best use of your time. We expect you to be working for us full time. How do you explain, you're not even doing it on their time, but on your own time?
Yeah, you ought to have a right to do what you want to do on your own time, right? I think for me, if I was talking to one of those people, I might say, are you being thoughtful about how this is going to affect your health, how this is going to affect your life? But some of these people are. I think, outside of something like waiting tables at multiple restaurants or something, when we're talking about people let's say, working for a tech company and then working for a second tech company, there's really three reasons that leap to mind why a person might do this. The first of them is money. The second of them is boredom. And the third of them is that, like, this is temporary, that I'm working 2 jobs because I'm getting ready to quit my old job, but I want to have a soft landing, and I'm willing to sort of ride 2 horses at once for a couple months as I figure that out. And I would say in all 3 of those, man, that you got to make the decisions you want to make as an individual, but I want to talk to your manager. I want to understand, like, how they created a situation where someone who's, you know, smart and engaged and apparently has the capacity to be doing a lot more work than they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Doesn't see any reason why they should be doing that work in your organization.
Untapped potential there.
Massive, right?
And then I understand, too, there could be some nasty surprises when it comes to paying taxes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an accountant, but I can imagine that if you're working at 2 companies at once, each of them is going to try and do their best to figure out how much tax to pay on your behalf. But if neither of them knows that you're working for some other company, I'm sure they're going to get that math wrong. How could they not? Right?
Yeah.
And that really comes back to the core of it, is that it would be one thing if you said, you know, I'm doing this and I've talked with my manager about it, and, you know, she knows that I want to start my own business, and so I'm doing like a side hustle thing, and she's really supportive of it. That's great. I mean, like I said, you should be entitled to do what you want to do in your spare time, and it's not my job to tell you that you might get overtired. You know, you might burn yourself out there. If it's a choice that everybody's, you know, discussing out loud, when you're in a spot where the thing that you're doing, you've got to hide from one or both employers because you're pretty sure that if they found out about it, you'd be fired. I just think that's a lot to wake up with every day. You may have to do it. You got to pay your bills. You got to pay your bills. And if that's the way that you're doing it, my heart goes out to you. I just think that's a hard situation to be in for any long period of time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what an easy way out of this. There's obviously no easy way out, right? If you're kind of caught that way because they can monitor so much of what you do, like you're describing the situation with Dave, what do you do? I mean, yes, you have to fess up because otherwise you're lying and you're cheating in this particular case, and that's not the way to go. You're kind of stuck here, aren't you?
Yeah, I would love for us to tackle it before it gets to that spot, right? I think that, you know, particularly if you're working in some knowledge work context, I'd want to be talking to my boss and be like, hey, is there other stuff that I can be taking on? Because I feel like I can cruise through this stuff in 2.5 hours a day, right? Good. Like, you know, and the money that you make working 2 jobs at once, I mean, hey, like, who wouldn't want their salary doubled, right? But in a lot of these high growth industries, you can actually see your salary grow much faster by growing within that role. And you know, a danger with taking 2 jobs at once is I bet you're doing a mediocre job of both of them. And so I bet you're going to stay in a pretty junior spot for a while. And again, if that's what you got to do to get by, I'm not trying to knock you off it. Sure. But like the conversation you could have with a boss who knew what they were doing at least, is like, you know, Natasha, you said it earlier, there's untapped potential here. Like, put me in. I'm ready for more.
Yeah, which is true. Can you imagine what boss would be upset to hear from an employee, hey, I'd like even more work. Can you give me some more stuff to do? I have the time and I want to do it.
Yeah,
I'd
but
love to hear that.
I also kind of like the idea, as Jonathan suggested, to sort of saying, look, I'm going to probably take on a side hustle. I need to have a little bit more income. I need a little bit more responsibility, unless maybe you can provide me with
Yes, a similar way of doing the same thing, right?
All of this, to me, boils down to honesty is the best policy, Jonathan.
I think that's true. And I would say, you know, I wouldn't put that all on the worker, right? So, like, if I feel like I can't talk to my boss about what's going on, if I feel like I want to start a side hustle, but like there's no way they're going to be receptive to that, man, that's something they did.
Tough spot,
right?
To be
that's something in terms of our working relationship where I just don't feel safe having that conversation with them. I don't feel like I can trust them with that information. That's some internal reflection that manager's got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Great story and great perspective. Jonathan, thank you so much. Appreciate it today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great talking to you both.
Thank you.
All right, there you go, Jonathan Nightingale. Tough spot to be in, but so reflective of what it is to work in 2022 right
Agreed.
now.
Although, I mean, I was part of the gig economy for so many years where I had so many different hustles going on. I feel like there's been a bit of a revival of that. You know, like there were so many people who were doing like me, like writing.
But you were doing that stuff as part
freelance.
of another thing. Right.
None of them were full-time. Yeah, exactly.
This is you got a boss and your boss is expecting you to do this and he sees that you're doing that instead of this and then you're done?
Although to some degree that still existed. Like when I was working at Milos, but writing for the Gazette, each person sort of expects you to be their top priority.
And available whenever they need you, right?